Many people experience recurring dreams, some of which are extremely disturbing. And Martin, who lived in Polstead, England in the early 1800s, was one such person. The dream was straightforward but vivid. She kept seeing her stepdaughter Maria's body, dead and buried inside a barn not far from where they lived. The problem with this dream, however, was that the girl could still be alive. Despite numerous letters, they hadn't heard from her in nearly 11 months. In May of 1827, Maria and her new husband, William Corder, eloped to Ipswich. In the few letters William wrote to the Martins, he made elaborate excuses for why she hadn't written back, ranging from a broken hand to mail going missing. To put their minds at ease, he made certain to tell them she was happy and doing well. Despite the horrifying visions that continued to haunt her, and had refused to tell her husband Thomas about them. She was afraid he would dismiss it as a woman's superstition. Despite her fear, Thomas, upon hearing of the nightmares, went to the barn, which had been the last known location the two had visited before leaving. Knowing his wife had said she'd seen Maria buried beneath the floor, Thomas went about removing debris from the floor, looking for any sign that something had been hidden beneath. He came across an unusual indentation in the dirt while doing so and began picking at it with a spike. When he raised the tool, he discovered a piece of decaying human flesh impaled on the end. He started carefully excavating the rest of the area and soon discovered the badly decayed remains of a woman with long hair and a green handkerchief tied around her neck. It was all he needed to see to realize his wife's vision was more than a dream. It wasn't until Anne told him that Maria was wearing the same bandana he'd found the day she ran away that he realized they'd found their stepdaughter. Corder was immediately identified as the prime suspect in the case because he was the last person anyone knew and had seen. However, the fact that he was a well-known problem in the community did not help his cause. Despite coming from a wealthy family, he was a known thief who committed check fraud on several occasions. Nonetheless, Maria, a single mother, was smitten by the troubled man. Despite William's desire to keep their relationship private, this becomes impossible when Maria discovers she is pregnant with his child. He proposes, and they begin planning their wedding for shortly after the baby is born. Unfortunately, the child dies only a few days after birth. He tells the family that despite the loss of their child, he still wants to marry Maria, but that it must be done quickly. He informs them that he has heard that the constable intends to publicly whip Maria for the third time for having a child out of wedlock. On May 18, in 1827, William arrives at the Martins and informs them that they must leave. He claimed that the police were ready to arrest her at any time. To avoid arrest, he instructed Maria to dress like a man and handed her a bundle of clothes. He then told her to pack her belongings and meet him in the barn a short distance away. It was the last time anyone saw her alive when she exited through the back door. Almost a year passes before the police finally find William in London. He's married now, and when they ask him if he'd ever known a Maria Martin, he claims to have no idea who they're talking about. Regardless of his ignorance, he is arrested on suspicion of murder. The crime story quickly spreads. Maria is depicted as she was, a poor girl who was duped by a wealthy fast-talking man who promised marriage but instead received death. Even more incredible was the story of how a dream led to the discovery of her remains. The newspapers at the time knew the story would be devoured by the masses. As the story became more popular, the town of Polstead became a more popular tourist destination. Thousands of people had gathered by the time the trial was scheduled to begin, hoping to witness what would become a sensation. Seating tickets were issued because there was such a high demand for them. Despite the small number, thousands of people waited outside the courthouse to hear the outcome of the proceedings. He was facing a total of 10 charges. The list included shooting, stabbing and suffocation. The evidence against the young man appeared to be overwhelming. And not only testified that she was in the same room as the two when they agreed to meet at the barn. Another fact revealed during testimony was that the constable denied ever issuing a warrant for Maria's arrest. Police had even located a passport that the prosecution claimed he planned on using to escape the country. Despite William Corder's claim that he was being judged falsely by the public and the papers, he didn't do himself any favors by not keeping his story straight. He claimed they had argued, but he denied ever hurting Maria in the barn. After only 35 minutes of deliberation, the jury found him guilty of the crime. When it came to sentencing, the judge didn't hold back and sentenced him to death by hanging. A few days later, the sentence was carried out. Apparently, William had a change of heart and confessed to the crime to a chaplain the night before, claiming he'd accidentally shot Maria during a scuffle. Shortly before his death, he publicly accepted responsibility. The most bizarre aspect of William Corder's story occurred after his execution. After an hour of hanging, his body was taken to a nearby hospital, where a surgeon cut open his chest and pulled back the skin to reveal the muscles inside his chest. Thousands of people queued to see the naked man. The next day, things went from bad to worse. Doctors and students from the surrounding area came to assist with an autopsy on Corder's body. His organs were removed, and skin was removed from his body and taken to a tanner. These served as the cover for a book detailing his sins. For years after the town became a tourist destination, people would come to gawk at the spot where Maria's body was discovered. During this time, visitors looking for a souvenir stripped the barn bare. Pilgrims even chipped away at Maria's headstone as personal keepsakes. Few things survive nearly 200 years after the murder, but the book wrapped in William's skin is kept in a Suffolk museum as a dark reminder of the past. What are your thoughts on the William Corder's case? I really appreciate your input. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Be a part of the Chris Crime Diaries family and hit the subscribe button now.